Hey, everybody out there. We're ready to get going here with Dr. Lee Merritt, and you're going to love this. So here we go. Mm.
It was revealed a plan of what's going to happen next. So I can't say it, but I'm telling you, I know what's going to happen next. So I instructed her. We have a bunch of booklets coming out that when they come out, just trust me. You need to know what's in there. I don't care if you have to just take them. Don't steal them. I'll give them to you. But these are things that are strategic. I know what they have planned. What I told her is how much metal you have in your body will affect you when this thing happens. It has to do with frequency. Okay, so that I stay safe and I can come back and I stay alive, I want to tell you something. I will give you a hint of what he showed me. It's going to happen. And you have to get rid of these metals in your body. And I know exactly how to do it very easily. If you want to do it fast and quick, it would be green drinks. Anything green. And, the whole fiber thing and all that. I know. But what I'm saying is there's something with chlorophyll that has to do with it. It matches. It's very close to your blood. In its structure. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so you have to have a carrier that will grab things and take them out of your body, okay? That's why I wanted her to speak to you about this. So if you want to know what's going to happen, and it could happen tomorrow, it could happen, but they're going to say it's something else. You're going to have to do your own thinking about this. I don't want to get in trouble, but just stick a piece of foil in a microwave and picture that in your body. And now you know the devil's plan.
The new Kate Daly Show PSA. Censorship comes in when the lie isn't working anymore. The show starts now.
All right. Welcome, Kate Daly Show. So happy to have you with us today. I've got Dr. Lee Merritt. She's a gem. Boy, how long have you been coming on my show since? Trying to think. I was trying to think about this, and I think since 2021 is when I hold on, let me fix this. Sorry. I think that's when, oh my gosh, can't turn anything off. So that's when I first had you on. Can you believe that?
Wow. Yeah. 5 years. This is our 5th year anniversary.
Yes. And we were speaking out about everything so truthfully. And I'm telling you, we weren't far off. We'll say that. And your help through the years has just been amazing, and your insights, because we were both research hounds. So your research has just been amazing. And I love it that you'll share notes and you just want everyone to learn, and I want everyone to learn. And I just really like that about you. So welcome to the show. And I'm excited to have you. Actually, you have a new book out.
Yes, I do. And thankfully the book is done before I got divorced.
She's not actually getting divorced.
No, but he told me I can't write another one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, one more month and probably, huh?
Oh yeah, it was a slug at the end.
Oh my gosh. When I just write ebooks, it's a lot. So I can't even imagine this book. Let me show everybody this book really fast. This is Escaping the Medical Matrix, Discovering the Path to Health and Freedom. Where can they get this book, Lee?
Well, it's not quite out. It's going to come out in August, and they can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
Hopefully other places, but yeah. And if they wanted to come to my meeting that's in August 21st and 22nd in Omaha, I'll be doing a book signing if we have the books. This has been a little bit longer getting through editing and everything than we anticipated. So
yeah. I would imagine. So it's a lot, because I'm sure that the ideas even in this book are going to be something for somebody to digest. So I cannot wait till you kind of give us a little bit of the synopsis of the book. I know I don't want you to do the whole thing, because I want people to actually get the book. When you read the book, it's like getting everything in context, so there's no way you could cover everything on a show like this, but there's just so much to cover. And I wanted to mention just a couple of things, and this is kind of like headline stuff for just a moment. Let me get this out of the way. So Mitch McConnell's absence, this is the headline today, sparks political showdown. So let me put up this graphic. Let me see here, because this is basically what's going on here with Mitch McConnell. And they did the same thing to Ginsburg and who knows how many others. But Ginsburg, they paraded around as alive forever too. But it just would not shock me to find out that he was dead, because I think this is what they're doing. So yeah, it's ridiculous. But what do you do? They're all bought and sold. So all of them. There's nobody is your friend in the Senate or the House. So also Cuba, they were also saying how Cuba had major disruptions because of the blackout crisis. And all I kept thinking was, no, that's us doing it to them. I really doubt they're having blackouts on their own. Also, water cyber attacks hitting at least 7 states. No, that's us. That's our CIA. That's our intelligence racket going to town because they're testing out water cyber attacks, I think, all over the country because they want water to go way up in price. They also want shortages. They also want to blame that for the food that's not going to be there. And then they can service up their fake food. So when I saw this headline, just to translate, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Yeah, all of a sudden in 7 states, we have all these cyber attacks. And I always love it because it's always the boogeyman cyber attack, the unknown anonymous cyber attacker. So anyway, I just always think it's us. And then, of course, travel in the Middle East, they were telling you don't travel over there or be prepared to leave. But they're also telling you to join the STEP program, which is the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. If anyone's this stupid, you go right ahead. But it's also, they want to monitor you, but they say they want to monitor the country's specific alerts and give them to you. But they're basically monitoring you even further. I mean, if that's what you want, that's what you want. And then also a planet with an Earth-like atmosphere has been found. And somebody was talking about this. His name was Jason Dittman or Dip Crap or however you want, Jason. Anyway, this is the first time we're seeing a rocky Earth-like planet that could still have an atmosphere. Really? Okay, anyway, that's our news for the day. I'm looking at all of it going, and that's fake, and that's fake, and that's fake. Okay, now we're ready to roll. All right. So if you want to comment on any of that.
Well, you left out the disease of the week.
Oh, what's the disease? Oh, sorry. We need to get like a little ding, ding, ding. Disease of the week.
I mean, literally, I have a friend who's the big talk jock on KFAB radio in Omaha, and we joke that we could do a weekly show now because he has me on every once in a while, and so he had me on about hantavirus, and then we got cyclospore, and now we've got the bourbon virus. I said we're gonna have to do 2 shows a week just to keep up with their fake outbreaks. It's not to say that people aren't getting sick, and there is some real germ involvement here, at least in cyclospora. But come on now, anybody that's paying attention needs to realize that in this. Have you heard about this bourbon virus?
Okay, what is the bourbon virus? Are you kidding?
I was hoping I know. I was hoping it was at least named after some good Kentucky bourbon, but no, it's named after a city or town in Kansas or something.
Of course
but there have only been 7 cases in the entire world. Okay. And now keep in mind that all viruses, I mean, this is not just me saying this. Viruses are being artificially defined by computer algorithms. If you didn't have computers, you couldn't come up with these genomes. There's no complete genome of any virus ever found in the wild.
Okay.
So what they do is they have somebody that's sick with theoretically, I mean, if you believe the narrative, this is how it works. You have people that have a similar disease. So let's say COVID. They come down with a very similar syndrome, and so then they if it's a pulmonary disease, for example, they take some of their lung fluid. Yeah. And they can't separate it from all the other stuff in there because they don't really know what they're looking for. Okay. They literally kind of dipstick it with these PCRs. They call them something different in the lab, but they're little short testers for short fragments of DNA or RNA.
Okay.
And then they process this through a little machine that looks at comparisons of the short segments and makes them a little bit longer. And then they take the longer segments, which we're really only talking about, 150 base pairs or bases. It's not very long. And then they put them into a computer algorithm where they marry them up against a previously known virus, and they come up with a sequence. Now, first of all, that by itself, it doesn't work. In fact, in COVID, people don't realize the complete lie about how they never isolated it. But one of what the point is that if you didn't have, it's just composited. It reminds me of the pictures of Earth that all have stamped clouds on them. I mean, you can't. It's not if you can't show me one whole picture of Earth, what's wrong here? So. Show me the whole thing. They can't do that. And so, first you have to start with a consistent disease. How do you do that when there have only been 6 widely spread cases all over the place? But you've come up with a genome from that, and now you claim that anytime you get another one, you can compare it to that. And so now they've got another case. Now, I last week when I was on radio, I said to my friend, I said, Cyclospora, it's a real thing. But God didn't make Cyclospora yesterday, or if you believe in evolution, it didn't make evolution. Evolution didn't evolve yesterday. It's been around for millennia. Okay, so now, since we can identify, now it is a real, it's a real parasitic thing. So it's not, we don't doubt that it exists in this case. It's not a virus. But you never reported a disease when when I looked at the CDC numbers last, it was 1 in 200,000 people got it.
Okay.
You never cared about that, and that's just background noise. So why are they reporting it now? And to your point, it's a psychological operation using diseases. But this is the kind of the ultimate absurd end of this, where they're now reporting 6 cases in the world. And they're worried about this one case, and there might be others. I just loved the reporting. I said, this is nonsense up with which I will not put, as Winston Churchill once said.
It's just so insane. I mean, is measles not sticking as their biggest feardom ever? I mean, it's funny because all these new little things keep cropping up. But what cracked me up was when everyone fell for the variants, because the variants,
not everyone,
I know, right? Travel around the world in 1 month, and it was only viable for like a month, and everyone thought they had it, so everyone was a victim, so everyone could get attention. Well, I had that variant, so look at me. And it cracked me up because have we had those since? They still claim COVID is there, but yet the variants aren't. And you've got to be kidding me, because that was their way to get people in for those extra doses.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you this. Did I tell you about going to the gene bank and looking at the PCR tests for COVID, because it pertains to all of this?
I don't know. Tell us again.
Well, so and this was probably August of 2020. So I didn't have to wait for somebody in Congress to expose Fauci to figure this out, as most of us thinking did not. So when all this was going on, I said, I wonder what they're really testing us to. So I studied a little bit, figured out how they did these PCR tests, and I realized that by August of 2020, they had uploaded a bunch of what they called the genome of different types of SARS-CoV-2 into the gene bank. The gene bank is like the big encyclopedia of genetic sequences. You find something, you find a new animal, for example, that you've never seen before, and you sequence them. Now, we can do that. You can sequence an animal, you see it in front of you, and you can do a gene sequence on it, because it's a cellular being. You can take out the nucleus and get a fairly decent isolate, and you can do that. Okay, so they have all these genomic sequences in the gene bank. How do you look at it? Well, there's an encyclopedia index. It's called the BLAST program, and it's a computer program that you put up you put up the sequence of whatever you've got, and then it looks to see if it's in the gene bank already. Now, when they told us that SARS-CoV-2 was so unique that, it's the only thing that has these genetic sequences, and if you get a positive test, then you must have had this, or you've been exposed to it, or somehow it's in you. Well, so if that's true, then when you take a PCR test and it's positive, you should be able to put that sequence into the gene bank and see that the only thing it could be positive to would be SARS-CoV-2. In other words, you take the test, you run it through the index, and it should tell you it's SARS-CoV-2. If it tells you that it's a mushroom or an aardvark or something, then this is not a specific test, and it means nothing.
Right.
So there were 18 tests made, 6 by the Drosten Group, 6 by the CDC, and 6 by the Louis Pasteur Institute. And they were all from this area near that spike protein, that scary thing, that spike protein. So they're all supposed to be around that. And so it's the only thing that's ever been seen in the SARS-CoV-2. So if you have positive, so I should have taken those 18 tests, and all 18 should have shown SARS-CoV-2. The shocker was, when they without prompting the thing to look for SARS-CoV-2, I just put it into the gene index and just let it run. They all came back. Homo sapiens gene 5, Homo sapiens gene 8, Homo sapiens gene 12. Homo sapiens is us. They were testing to our genome. So this was not just about overcycling. This was about complete fraud. So just to be clear, then I went and I looked at H1N1, the swine flu years ago. They claim they've got that sequence. I looked at the tests for that, because now they're using these bird flu, swine flu tests to look at our animals and see if they should be destroyed. So I put those sequences up because I couldn't find the current bird flu, which was an H1N1. I couldn't find it. They're not, I think they heard me. So they're not putting out the sequences anymore. You can't find them. But I could find the one from 2009 or whenever that hit. And I put that up in the gene bank. And again, it came back Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens this, Homo sapiens. So again, they've got these tests that are to our genome. And if there's a great book by Kerry Mullis, the guy that invented these tests, he wrote Dancing Naked in the Mind Field, MIND. I love them. And he was a beautiful writer. It's too bad that
I think he actually died mysteriously because
I think they took him out because he would have blown the whistle on the whole thing. He was going to even testify for O.J. Simpson. He was going to show how you couldn't make that assumption that they were making about the really? Testing of that blood. Yes, because you see, you can exclude people, but you can't unless you have something to norm it to, and somebody that you can't say that was it. So anyway, but so what in this whole situation, when I lost my train of thought here about the putting.
So you were talking about Kerry Mullis because he was going to.
Yeah. So he explains why it doesn't work for diagnosis. So, and I kind of got, his explanation is a little bit technical, but in the bottom line here is that you and I and every living thing share about 65% of our genome. Okay. I jokingly say that we share 65% with a banana, maybe 70% if you're a politician. So the point being is that it's impossible to it's just essentially impossible to do this. And the fact that they were testing to our own genome, and I think that this is all a fraud. I mean, it's just like the point is, the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it, because they can't believe it could be at this level. And then you say, well, how can they fool the scientists? And the answer is because the scientists are not going back to the basic premises. I hate to say it, but you're a PhD student. Do you question the basic premise of your whole profession? Yeah. If you're a virologist, some did. That's how this all kind of cracked out. Is a virologist kind of blew the whistle on this, said, "Hey, wait a minute, there's no there."
Yes.
And so he says, "Don't call me a biologist now. Just don't call me a virologist. Call me a biologist." So it's really bad, the whole thing. And so, but when you have such an indeterminate, made up thing, you can use it however you want to. A made up object is kind of like a boogeyman. And I have a chapter about that kind of in my book about the boogeyman, because you make it scary and you tell stories about it and you use it to scare little children, but it doesn't exist. And so you can create this image of whatever you want it to be. And that's what we're doing with viruses. COVID was a label. It was a label for all the symptoms, right? So the PCR test didn't have any COVID in it. So it wasn't a COVID test. Wasn't it more like a identifier that you're possibly fighting something? No, it was supposed to be it was supposed to be a PCR test looks for a DNA sequence or an RNA sequence. So what it was supposed to test for a sequence that was in that specific virus. And that's what it did not do and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And then if in going back in time when I was thinking about my training, now I trained in the 70s in medical school when honestly, when we talked about how diseases are spread, you know what we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
Not viruses. We talked about parasites in the textbooks.
Hmm.
So viruses weren't they weren't the thing they are now, right? People don't realize that viruses are, it's a new, so yeah, no, they were supposed to be testing for exactly that thing. And that being a fraud, the whole thing falls apart.
Mm.
Plus, since I've talked to you last, I mean, Michael Yeadon, the former vice president of Pfizer, came out and I believed this and I looked into it myself to try and find proof. And I believed what I'm going to tell you, but I don't have the gravitas that he does. But this guy's not only a veterinarian researcher, he was a PhD in pulmonology. So this gives him some credibility. And he said, there is no evidence of airborne transmission of disease. This is a guy that was the vice president of Pfizer's chief science officer in England. So think how bizarre the world is when everybody was well, we weren't, but everybody else was masking up for something that never even existed.
And 6 feet apart for something that you could get or catch. There are so many people under that delusion that if everybody could just think about this for just a second, if that were true, you'd always be sick. We would all be sick all the time. We'd have employees get us sick. You'd have kids get you sick. You'd just be sick all the time. You'd never.
And that's what I think somebody made the comment, something like, if viruses existed, we wouldn't be around to talk about it. I think that's true.
Amen. It was developed in the early 1900s.
Yeah, it actually the idea of a so-called virus really started with, virus in Latin means poison. Yes. And so I'm just going to point out that there was a guy, and this is one of the things I have in the book. By the way, what I do is I go back in history and I just show you what happened, because the same play that worked in COVID was done in 1918. In fact, the guy that ran it, one of the guys that was a scientist from the Rockefeller Institute that ran it, is like the dead ringer of Anthony Fauci.
Yes.
That's a little bizarre. Wow. But then you go back to smallpox, same program, a guy that, and what you find is I don't have to go into detailed science. This is a book that anybody can put their hands on and read and not feel they need a PhD in chemistry. This is in plain language, because what I do is look at who did it. Are they real? Right. Are they frauds? And it turns out that, the story we got of smallpox, the bedtime story is that all these people were dying of this terrible disease, worst disease in the history of mankind, until this great and wonderful physician, Edward Jenner, noticed that the milkmaids were not getting smallpox. They were just getting some pox on their hands. And he theorized that it might be something they were getting from the cows. So he goes to a dairy and he examines the cows, and lo and behold, they have a rash on their udders that looks like smallpox. And he said, aha, this must be cowpox. We'll call it cowpox, and it must be a lesser form. And if I can somehow use that to inoculate other people, maybe they won't get sick either, just like the milkmaids. Well, the same program ran. They made this crude. Now if people knew, I mean, when they talked about vaccines back then, they didn't have sterilization, right, and they didn't have needles. So what did they do? They literally took pus from the udders of cows and they made cuts in your arm and smeared this in there. That was the vaccine. Great science, right? But it turns out that the only thing that's true in that whole story is that the milkmaids weren't dying of smallpox. That was true. And they weren't scarred by smallpox on their face, which is something you could notice. So you could see people on the street and say, oh yeah, it's smallpox. Right. So it turns out the whole thing is a lie. And one of the ways that we should have known it was a lie is that there's no such thing as cowpox. Where is Harvard on this one? Okay, the veterinarians know this. I looked it up in the veterinary literature. They say they call it pseudo cowpox, as in fake cowpox, because bulls don't get it, steers don't get it, baby heifers don't get it. The only cows that get so-called cowpox are those being milked by the dirty hands of the milkmaids. So what they call it is milkmaids nodules. Oh, that's what it really, it's going the other direction. So this is very easy to check if anybody had gone back to primary resources. And that's what I'm saying that we're not doing. And it's just,
100%.
but in smallpox, by the way, they trotted out, just like we had football players and singers and famous TV people coming out and saying that you were crazy if you didn't take this vaccine and you owe it to humanity. And well, same thing in 1820 when they tried to get this going. I mean, we're talking 1790s to early 1800s when they were really coming on with the smallpox vaccine. And it turns out they in this case, they used the royals. So it was the king's illegitimate twin sons was one of them. And, and they had famous royal family people came out and said, oh yes, we've gotten our vaccine and you should too. I mean, it was,
right.
They paid Edward Jenner the equivalent of in today's money, $1 million to run this program. And he was not a physician. He was not a trained physician. We call him Dr. Jenner. Everybody thinks he's a physician because if you say it over and over, it becomes real, right?
Yes.
The world is made of words. So what happened is he actually was an apothecary, which is not even trained as well as pharmacists are. He's a crude apothecary. But he paid 15 pounds sterling to some organization and got a medical license and hung it out. And there he was. So the whole thing. And that's what I've discovered is that we live in a world of not only fake science, but fake scientists. So the first part of the book is convincing you how bad the lie really is by showing you the history of a lot of different things.
This is the book that's about to come out, ladies and gentlemen. This is one you should if you don't grab this, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, this is going to be so good. I really love that you're putting all this in print, because I think one of the most frustrating things is having all these bits and pieces of information and not having it cohesively written down. So that way you can really absorb it and then share it with a friend or a family member, which I'm sure that most of you have, like me, family and friends that they swear to the pharma gods. I mean, they bow to the pharma gods. I'm sorry. They should swear, but they
they swear at the pharma gods.
And you just can't imagine. My husband and I were talking about this last night, as a matter of fact, and he was saying, every time you go to the doctor, they kind of invent a new thing that probably could be with something that they can prescribe you, and
exactly.
It makes me not want to ever go because of that. And I'm
and that's the point of escaping the matrix. And I tell people this all the time. I say, look, I know you want to see Justice and Fauci and, the other guys at pharma taken down. But quite frankly, you can do that every day of the week and it doesn't make you healthier. What we really need to do is we need to get out of this system and create real health. And we learned a lot. The good news is we learned a lot in COVID. And the good news is, too, that nobody really has to go down with this. If you do the right things, even if you took the vaccine, there are things you can do. Now, see, they're coming out. If you notice, what was it? Yale. I can't remember who was first, Yale or MIT. I think it was Yale. That first they said, "Oh, you crazy anti-vaxxer people! This mRNA vaccine doesn't get into your DNA. It's not going to damage you." And then a little later, you can just hear Tavistock's, psychologic operations working here. A little later, then they had Yale come out and say, this is after the rollout was completed, after the most people got their vaccine, but now they want you to be doom and gloom. So they say, oh, maybe we were wrong. It looks like it does get into the nucleus, but we don't know if it gets in the DNA, but it does get in the nucleus. Then about 6 months after that, we have MIT saying, ooh, sorry guys, it does get into your DNA and it might change it. So then you got people talking about how, ooh, we're a new species now. It's nothing you can do. Just, end it all or whatever. It's horrible. So don't let them lie to you twice. It wasn't safe and effective, but it's also not necessarily irreversible.
If anything, COVID being a label to everything, I know people want to think they had the COVID, whatever the hell that is. Even in my own husband's hospital report, it's had an asterisk that said it was pneumonia and possible COVID because they had to do a disclaimer at the bottom because they can't say it,
They were trying to be honest, but they couldn't be honest completely because they had to put it on the death certificate if he died.
They got the money for him having COVID in ICU.
Yeah.
So he just didn't go on the ventilator and remdesivir, which would have given them a lot more money because I was a stickler and said no. But it's kind of amazing all of this happening because if anything, everyone should be pretty awake now to the medical cabal. Medical cabal part of this, because that should have shown it in spades, right? I mean, by now it should have shown everybody.
Well, and when we think of cabal, we kind of think like when cabal really is kind of a political term, but we kind of think of it like a mafia, that this is just about organized crime and money. Okay.
Mhm.
But I'm going to tell you the one thing that I found since I've talked to you, Kate, is really kind of shook me to my roots, is to realize that the roots of medicine never came out of healing. You go back into the ancient days, we are a cult of poisoners. We came from poisoners. We did not come from healers. And I found this out, and it's all over. The symbols of this are all over modern medicine and all over the world. I found this out because I was looking at the history, and I've been looking at the ancient. Where did this whole nonsense? How did we get here? When you go way back in time, it turns out that when I was in medical school, we were taught, at Rochester, we had this great history of medicine library, and it was neat, old wood and kind of 1880s style. And the guys in the tweed jackets would go down and to talk about history, give you lectures on history of medicine. Very cool. But we were told that Asclepius, they had these old gods, the Greek myths. We were talked about, they didn't call it the pagan religion, they called it the Greek myths. And we were told that Asclepius was the god of medicine, and that the staff of Asclepius, which is the single staff with a snake around it, that was the symbol. And there was a big debate in the 70s when I was in school about the caduceus, because why are we doing that? That's not the symbol of medicine, blah, blah. And I always thought,
Snake wrapped around it. Yeah.
this is nonsense. Why do we care about this stuff? But we do care because symbols matter. So it turns out that that's not the story at all. They always put a front man out. Fauci's a front man. The guy that's up, he's not the guy that designed this or did anything. He's just the guy, the talking head, who can be sacrificed if we need to. And we're just going to put him out and make him do a job.
And you never see the designers of it. You never see the people that
you don't see because the guys that are really behind this are not as palatable as Fauci. And so you can imagine how bad that would be.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, when you go back in time, it turns out the story of Asclepius is this, that Apollo is the great god of medicine, and they call him Apollo the physician, and Apollo the physician was he never healed anybody. What he was known as a plague bringer and a poisoner. So when you went to the temple of Apollo, you didn't pray for your health. You prayed, you bribed the priest, you gave them money, you paid them so they wouldn't poison you. And I said,
Right.
oh, that is kind of a metaphor for modern medicine, maybe. But anyway, and so.
Well, I mean, when you go back to all the pharmaceutical plants that started with the vaccines, half of them were involved with poison of snakes, poison of different things. So, most of the places all had the poison lab, and people don't say that they were combining that with vaccines.
Right. Well, it is. Well, if you take GLP-1, to lose weight, you're getting a venom, chemical made from venoms. I mean, it's basically the shape of the venom. It's just artificially created. But here's the sad thing though, is that Apollo, when I don't know if people don't realize this, but this is what hit me about 6 months ago. And when we graduate from medical school, and I think this only applies to MDs, I've asked my DO friends, they didn't do this, and naturopaths don't do it. They captured us. MDs are the ones. And what happens is at the end of your 4 years of medical school, you've got a diploma in your hand. You could walk out right then. The ceremony's over, but you don't, because you think this is a ritual, that kind of the brotherhood of medicine. You stand up and in unison, you read, dare I say, chant, you read the Hippocratic Oath. Now we all think that the body of the Hippocratic Oath, I don't have any disagreement with. It's pretty, don't, in fact, it says in the body of the Hippocratic Oath, don't poison anybody and don't be paid to poison anybody.
Do no harm. Right.
But how does the oath start? It starts by us saying, I swear by Apollo the physician, Asclepius, Panacea, Hygeia, with all the gods and goddesses as my witness. This is a real oath. And at the end, we also swear to abide by this oath and this indenture. In other words, it's like a bond. You are an indentured servant to this thing. Michael Yon said to me at the Red Pill, he says, the definition of a cult is you don't know when you're in it. This is a cult of poisoners. So think about that. Although we're taking an oath not to poison people, we're taking an oath to the god of poisoning. I'm telling you, when I realized what I'd done, I literally out loud repented at my computer and prayed for forgiveness, because that is the real deal. And
Don't you find it weird
it's
that there
awful.
are 12 gods, just like Christ had 12 apostles? There are 12 main gods. Is it the counterfeit to what
Well,
Christ
sure.
created? Of
It's
course.
the inversion. It's just, it's the, and what we call what most people call Satanism is really the old pagan religion. And the names change, but the guys stay the same. And just, if anybody wants to do this, if they don't think that this is important, I was looking just for some pictures of Apollo. I didn't anticipate this happening, but for my talk and for talks I given for my book, I was looking for some pictures. And when I put it in, and I put Apollo like medicine or something, it was all over. There's the Apollo Pharmaceuticals is the largest pharmaceutical, 5,000 stores. It's the largest chain in the world. Apollo hospitals. In Greece, there's an Apollyon hospital. And Apollyon, if you remember from the Bible, is the god of the pit. I mean, it's everywhere. But here's where it gets to SARS-CoV-2 and COVID. It actually comes up to modern times. So Asclepius is actually the demigod. So he's half god, half human. By this pagan belief. And so Apollo gets a human woman pregnant. She tries to escape him just before the baby's to be born. He chases her down and murders her, and does a C-section, and out pops Asclepius. That's why he's a demigod. But who is the mother of Asclepius? Her name is Coronis. Okay, we don't call it a coronavirus because it looks like a crown. Corona also means crown. We don't call it that because it looks like a crown under the electron microscope. I have an original picture of the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. It looks like a blob on your windshield. What they named it for is because this is an homage to an ancient pagan religion. That's what's running this show. It's not about profit. Ultimately, it's about something much deeper and worse.
Oh my gosh.
Dark. It's dark.
It is. What I was going to also ask you, I played an intro piece where a guy was talking about the metals, and that, them firing off something that that makes those metals go crazy, like a piece of foil in a microwave, and that's what's coming. What is your thought on that? What's your first instinct on that?
That's quite possible. I finished this book and realized I hadn't really talked about COVID particularly. So I have a postscript that says, I lived through this as a physician. I want this on record. And if I could carve it into stone, I would, so it never gets changed. But the issue here is that what really was COVID. Now you had mentioned how, I can't remember what you said, but it made me think about how poisoning, you're talking about poisoners too. So people have to realize that poisoning and, infectious disease can look identical. Okay, if you poison a few people here and a few people there, and then you kind of move over. So James Giordano, who's a neuroscientist, and this is going to get to that question. He taught a class. He was giving a lecture at the Naval Academy. He's kind of works with DARPA and everything. He said, if I want to make a pandemic without a germ, here's how you do it. You go and you put a poison around, some kind of poison in a city. And then you get a few people sick and it maybe gets on the news, but you don't make a big deal about it. And then you go to another city and you poison some more people there. But then when it gets on the news, you make sure they say, well, this looks like it may have spread from point A, and we're concerned it's still spreading. So now there's a little bit more concern. And then you go to a third city and you poison that. And then you talked about people coming in that had vague symptoms. Then you describe the disease in detail, and you have a lot of vague symptoms. So people that, just have the normal, runny nose and sore throat, they run into the emergency room because now they're concerned they have this new disease. He calls it mobilizing the worried well. That's what makes it look like a pandemic. Now, look at COVID. We had Wuhan, we had Lombardy, Italy, and then we had New York City. That were the three cities. Then he says, you could also, if you wanted to be really high tech, you could put down some kind of nanoparticle that would get into the body or the brain and cause problems. So, yes, I think one of the things is, of course, we've been shooting people up with mercury and aluminum in these vaccines for decades. So people have gotten a pretty good dose of heavy metals from these guys. And heavy metal poisoning is a classic ancient pagan thing. Just out of alchemy. This is what mercury is a big deal for them.
Mhm.
So that's possible. But I tell you what I think it's most likely is going on here. It's a variant, and that is optogenetics. And when I started talking about this, I had not heard anybody talking about optogenetics. I found this because I looked up the father of CRISPR, and it turns out he says you can't really feng-jiang, you can't really do precise gene insertion. So I thought, well, if that's true, what are we really doing? And it turns out his PhD is in optogenetics. And what you do is you make an opsin, which is a light sensitive chemical.
Okay.
You inject it into an animal. Then it doesn't do anything until you turn on a wavelength, and then it can change the animals. You can get it if you choose one for the brain, you could cause the rat to have, bad thinking and not get through the maze. Or you can choose one for the heart, and you could start and stop the heart. In fact, this is so precise, this science of optogenetics, that they can map the heart by causing little mini arrhythmias all over the heart and figure out where the nerves are going. So, or how the nervous system in the heart works. So, I'm concerned because remember the Travis Scott concert?
I do. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what happened?
Little experimentations.
These are young people. I'm not going to go to that kind of a concert. So, it's not a bunch of old people that dropped over. These are young, healthy people, but they all had to be vaccinated to go to the show. And then they walked through a tunnel of throbbing lights and sound and lots of wavelength. And when they got in at some point in the concert, somewhere over 10 people dropped. And it was not the crush, when you found people to talk, when you heard people talking, looking through and find, they weren't being crushed until these people fell, and then they didn't have room to do CPR. So one guy I found that had survived said, it felt like my heart stopped. And I just thought, oh gosh, here we go. So it is possible that they're designing opsins, they're putting them in these vaccines. And unfortunately, the way the opsins work, that one of the things that they're looking at, I just found a paper recently on this, is that you have atrial fibrillation, and every once in a while it kicks off and go into a high rhythm. Wouldn't it be nice if we could control that rhythm remotely, so you wouldn't have to always come in the emergency room? They always have a good reason for doing these things, but it never seems to work out. So their idea, the way it works is these opsins are attached to cells that grow into your heart. And so I was hoping that if this were an opsin kind of issue, that the opsins are all long gone by now, but that's not the way it works. They grow into the heart or whatever part of the body, the brain, whatever they're attacking, and they multiply, and then they become effective over time as you get more and more of these cells. So that's the problem. I hope I'm wrong about this. I really hope I'm wrong about this. But the other simpler possibility, I got to say, is that we're dealing with parasites. I got to say, these guys, I'm not sure they use the high-tech, expensive solution when a cheap solution will do. And, the other thing I've learned that I didn't know before is that not one vaccine since the time of Edward Jenner is sterile by operating room definition. If you want to, let's say if you wanted to dose people with parasites, and I was thinking about this too, like cyclospora that's just come around. That doesn't really make a lot of sense that it's showing up all over these places. So is that really something that's naturally kind of spreading from lettuce in a field? I used to live in Yuma. That's the headquarters of lettuce. All the lettuce comes from there. It's possible. But it's also, we can't rule out that they're dosing the lettuce with this as it goes to market. Right. You could do that. It's easy to do. And so parasites, because it's a parasite, parasites are very resistant to lots of things. And to kill parasites, they're so tiny you wouldn't see them with a light microscope in the solution, or certainly with the naked eye. And they could be in there, and to get rid of them, you have to heat the solution up to 220 degrees centigrade or 440 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. And we don't do that. In fact, they made a big deal how it had to be super cooled because they wanted to convince you it's mRNA. Right. So in my opinion, which may turn out to be wrong, I'm not saying I have all the answers here, but in my opinion, the best fit for the science to explain all this is that this is not about mRNA at all. This is about something else. And either it's opsins or it's parasites. And parasites we can deal with. So, and maybe we can opsins too, but parasites we know how to deal with now. So my point to people is they always, they know the antidote. There's always if they're going to do a bioweapon, they know there's an antidote out there somewhere. I have a feeling that we're just dealing with cheap, simple junk that's in parasites, and that they just figured we're not going to catch on. And in favor of that, when people had early symptoms after the vaccine, and you compare the symptoms of people that got vaccinated and they have these heart problems and various different things, and some sudden deaths, and some people were asymptomatic, that is almost identical to when you get Chagas disease. When people in South America get Chagas disease, they get bit by an arthropod, some kind of tick or bug or something, and it transmits the parasite. So I kind of think we're dealing with that, but I don't think I think people should be on a parasitic program because that's easy, especially if you took the vaccine. And I've seen that reverse vaccine symptoms taking an anti-parasitic drug. So
yeah, one of the things in the video that the guy was talking about in the intro, when he talked about how many metals we're taking into our body, and then of course it being like a piece of foil in a microwave, all they have to do is insert the right thing, and many of us don't live through that. Okay, could I see it happening? Possibly, sure. Yeah, it would make sense, given the high levels of metals, right? So yeah, of course. And everything's a diversion. So when you were saying that just now, I think everything is a diversion. They always want you to look here while they're over there. And so if you were really good at figuring out the deep state, you would figure out how they operate, and it's always by diversion. So what is the diversion? And sometimes we don't want to think a diversion's going on. And what was the other thing I wanted to...
So look at what they don't talk about. You see, they're talking about the potential, and aluminum. It's true. They've been shooting us up with aluminum, and that could potentially happen, but it's hard. It's not as easy as they're making it sound, because you know, that kind of wavelength has to be, you can open the door of your microwave. You're not going to get cooked at a distance. So it's going to have to be in a specific situation,
or those types of weapons.
But even so, those types of weapons, we had them in Iraq, you walk away from them. And so it's not going to be so easy to generalize. It could be done in some crowd, but maybe not, like take out all of America.
Universal. Yeah. I think
so. It's not going to be able to do that right away. So
it sort of defeat the purpose they need a lot of us. So when I was talking about that, what came to mind was chlorella, and how people with cancer are told to take a lot of chlorella, like 60 pills a day of chlorella, that kind of thing. And so I wanted to get your take on that, on removing that from the body. What is your take on that?
Of removing the aluminum?
Metals, just any
metals?
And just debris, like garbage out of your blood.
Well, I mean, I think we have several things. Like, again, first of all, your immune system has to be right. So the biggest risk of chronic disease is lack of minerals. So, I like the 90 essential mineral pack. I use it myself. That's because if you're low on minerals, you just can't run the body systems, and you're more likely to get arrhythmias and all sorts of stuff, because you're electromagnetic. At the end of the day, we are electromagnetic holograms. And so I really think that's one. And enough salt. The big lie has been low salt diets. Do not have a low salt diet. That is just nonsense. But then the next step up is treat parasites, because that's low-lying fruit. Okay, we all have them anyway. Would you believe that is what the Rockefeller Institute was founded for? Theoretically, was to rid the country of hookworm. It's a parasite.
Yeah, and the hookworm was only in the South. It was solving itself, and they had to latch onto it to invent public health all over the country.
Yeah, shoes solved it mostly, but So that's possible. And then the obvious thing is, don't poison yourself, i.e. don't take any more vaccines. It's not just the COVID vaccine. We saw increased soccer deaths after the flu shot, but nobody was taking the time to tabulate it. I did it, and you could see what happened. So we need to not just get smart about what they're doing to us. But in terms of getting metals out, the first thing you can do is, chlorine dioxide is the universal antidote. And the reason is because these metals tend to be like mercury and lead and aluminum and things. They are positive cations. They're a positive charged particle. And so you need a lot of electrons to neutralize them. And the good news is chlorine dioxide, it steals the electrons back from them and gives it back to you. So it neutralizes. It helps neutralize heavy metals, all sorts of things. The only thing it really can't take out is fluoride, which of course they've been giving us too.
Okay, and does it make people stink?
Not really. I mean, if they're stinking, they're passing out toxins.
Wow.
That'll go away. I mean, after you've been on it for a while. So you can use chlorine dioxide. Clean your liver. So many old-time physicians from way back, they really made a big deal about cleaning the liver, and that can be done easily. I mean, you can buy liver cleanses. I used to not do this because I just didn't see what we were doing with it, but now I do it, and I grow beets in my garden every summer, and so for 6 weeks I do a beet juice cleanse. You just put them in not a blender, but in a juicer. You got to really get the fiber down. So you got to put it in a juicer, and just a little 1.5 inch, 2 inch beet, and you juice it up. You can put it with your minerals. You can put it with lemonade or whatever you want. Put some celery in it if you want to, and drink it. And that is super to clean out your liver. I have firsthand experience of that. So yeah.
Excellent. And your lymph system, a lot of times that's clogged and causing a lot of symptoms that we take for other things possibly, but maybe it's your lymph system not working.
Yeah, well, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but the castor oil is the kind of the tried and true. You put a castor oil pledget over your low back, for example, and your lymphs that go right through the lumbar area there. Boy, it gets things moving, and people do that for if they've had surgery and they're having swelling in their arm, it works for that. I had my own swollen ankle from a bee sting or whatever, and I ended up putting that on. And I will say too, nicotine. This thing about nicotine is not a fad. Brian Artis is completely right when he, I'm kicking myself because, he figured this out. Now we knew that was going on, but we didn't put the pieces together. We knew from the 1970s, we knew that they were experimenting with snake venoms and all these venoms to make blood pressure pills. That's what if you take lisinopril, you're taking an ACE2 blocker, and that's made from this chemical ligand basically of snake venom. So we knew they were using it, but if you go back in the old symbolism, why all this snake symbolism? What? And it turns out that they've been dealing with venoms is one of the things they've gone back 5,000 years they know about. So that's a real thing. And my own experience is people are still getting sick from this poison, in my opinion, that's been put out there. If you're going on I've had the experience where I went on a cruise ship, and I told everybody, I was in a group, 4 people, told them, don't get on here without having, you have a patch on for a couple days before you get on, or chew gum or something, but get yourself saturated so you're blocking your ACE2 pathway before you get on the ship, because public transport, airplanes, trains, buses, cruise ships are notorious. That's where you're going to pick this stuff up. And who didn't get sick? Me. Everybody else didn't listen to me, and they all got sick, and I spent my whole cruise taking care of them. So definitely that works.
Have you looked into comfrey for bones since?
I've heard that from my herbalist friends, but I have not yet.
Okay. I'm going to pick your brain on that some other time, because I
can research it if you want.
But what are your thoughts on Tom Cowan? People have been sending clips to me, and what's Dr. Tom Cowan?
Well, I think he's
ridiculous.
I can't remember the name of his book right now, but I've got it in my library. I think he's really a smart guy who has come up with a lot of good thinking. I mean, if it hadn't been for Andy Kaufman and Tom Cowan talking about there being no viruses, I would have said, what? No, that can't be true. I mean, we studied them all in my life, and then I started again. I went back in time and realized there was no there. So they're right. He does it for a lot of different things. So I think he's really right on there. Now, the only thing that I guess I disagree a little bit about, because I gave a talk somewhere, and their devotees came up to me and said, well, basically we disagree with everything you said, because I was saying, listen, I agree that bacteria, it is about the terrain. It's not the idea that there's the terrain theory and the germ theory, and it's not the germs aren't bad. It's just that they're scavengers. They're trying to heal you. That may be true for a lot of bacteria, but that's not the way parasites work. Parasites are electromagnetic. They're almost they may be demonic. They're sucking your energy out. and they can't be there without sucking your energy out. So I don't think there's any good relationship you can have with a parasite. By definition, they are taking you down. Whether they kill you or not is a different story, but they're not there doing anything good that I can see.
Yeah.
And I have a whole lecture I gave a couple times on about parasites or cancer. In fact, it's up on my website. Parasites or cancer. Here's the evidence. Before 1930, the predominant theory of cancer was that it was parasites by big university guys in our country and around the world. And they had evidence that it was infectious, that it happened in plague houses where it was associated with like swampy, humid areas. And here's how they do it. And this is why I wish I could carve my book in stone, because I want it to be a record. This was 1880s. There was a guy named William Russell. He was a famous pathologist. Okay. So he autopsied the dead, and he looked at tissue samples from living people and looked under the microscope. And he said, every cancer that I look at has a characteristic organism. I have discovered the characteristic organism of cancer. Now, that was 1880s, 90s. 1970s, when I was in medical school, that was we still talked about William Russell, the pathologist, and we still talked about his observations on cancer. But now, when you read the literature, what they tell you, he said, they call them Russell bodies. That William Russell saw these things in cancer cells, these Russell bodies. We don't know what they are, but he saw them. You see that? So they've changed the language, so we didn't ever think to look at what he really said.
Diminishes it. Yeah, takes the whole meaning away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, I got a question for you. Do you know who Terence McKenna is?
No.
I don't either. And I'm going to have to look it up, because I've got his or her quote in my book, but she's got a great quote. And it says that the syntactical nature of reality, the real magic, is that the world is made of words. And if you know the words that the world is made of, then you can make of it what you will. It's a beautiful quote, and I think it's exactly right on. They used the words, they changed the meanings. Virus, what did virus mean? In Latin, it means poison. So, the idea that pharmakia means drugs, but actually also is translated as sorcery. We've been led astray by our language. We have. And that's a big, but we're catching on.
Well, like all those ALS diseases, all the ones that kind of steal the over time, can't walk, then in a wheelchair, then death, and those were all basically invented by several scientists in the late 1800s that decided that they were going to say that this was what it is, some kind of syndrome, whatever it was, because they were getting funded. They were getting funded for their medical offices. So they decided to put their name on a disease that really wasn't a disease. Now, the diseases that they named that came out later was after all of the toxins, after all of the pesticides.
Right. So that was what I was going to say. It is a disease now.
But not in the 1800s.
So are you talking about Creutzfeldt and Jakob?
No, actually, I'm trying to think of the name offhand. He was the scientist that coined the term for certain different syndromes, and then also for ALS. The original back in the late 1800s. I mean, it's just amazing how they came up with all of these things.
Have to see who that was.
But somehow knew that in the future that we would have things that would cause things, and that would be applied to those level of degeneration of symptoms over time, but it's crazy, because it's just very well laid plans to me.
Well, Guillain-Barré probably is one. Guillain-Barré was the idea. We learned about it in medical school, and that was described in the 1800s as this neurologic ascending paralysis that people couldn't figure out. And there weren't many cases back then.
Yeah.
But now, I never saw a case, but as the flu shot came out in 2014 and became mandated for the nurses, and all these people started routinely taking flu shots every year, at least the nurses I knew, they'd all seen cases. Yeah. I only saw a case after the COVID vaccine, but these are clear. It's the number one disease that is a payout from the.
You said Jean Martin Charcot, right?
Guillain-Barré.
No, Sharkot. That was the guy that
Charcot.
went to jail.
Yeah, Charcot.
Yeah, these guys were given offices and money and everything else to start their business.
Well, and you have to have like you have to get in. I guess everybody to get a named disease. Usually, you have to go other than Crohn. Usually, you have to have 2 or 3 people. So you know, Osler, Weber, Rondeau was my favorite. I don't know who Rondeau was, but you know, Charcot-Marie Tooth. That's the one you're talking about.
Oh my gosh! Or one person in a rural community in Germany that no one's going to go find, and there was never any studies and never any info and never any other input other than what this one scientist said.
Right.
So, yeah, just makes me sick.
But in the case like in cancer, we had the data. They knew, you know, the joke in pathology is they know everything, the pathologist, but too late. But this time the pathologist knew what was going on, and so did a lot of other doctors. So there was, you know, in cancer, there was a doctor this is 1909. Guy went over from London to Germany, Luckau, Germany, I think. And the town had about 4,500 people. Now, this is in a day when cancer was rare. Before vaccination was a big deal. Cancer was 1 in a million. Okay. But in this town of 5,000 people, almost 4% were dying of cancer. So he goes over to investigate this, and here's what he discovered. And remember, what are they telling us about cancer? We don't know what causes it, but we think it's genetic. We're pretty sure it's genetic. Oh, yeah, it's got to be genetic. So he goes over there and he discovers that there are 2 types of places in this town. One is a high, dry place, and one is a low, swampy place. And he notices that all of the cancer is in the low, swampy place, not the high, dry place. Low, swampy place. So again, we and the plague houses in London, same thing. There was another guy that looked at this house because 4 people had died of cancer, and it was a big rooming house that had rented out maybe 15 rooms in the house. But in this one particular room, there were 4 people. 3 were dead and 1 was dying of cancer, and they all lived sequentially in the same room. And it turned out that room he noticed was damp. It was moist. Okay, because this is a parasite heaven. They like damp, dark places.
My gosh. Oh my gosh. So what is your take on, obviously we have 2 and 1 gets cancer in their lifetime now. So the war on cancer in the 70s, after 20 years after they were started dumping pesticides like crazy and calling it polio. When they did the war, so they did the polio shots, and then all of a sudden people started getting cancer. So then the cancer starts going up. So what's your take on the cancer that's rampant right now? Any thoughts on that?
Well, again, I think it's a bioweapon. I don't think it's I think they know that it's parasites. And I think, let's look at the timeline here a little bit. We set up Fort Detrick, our bioweapons lab, in World War II. Okay. And it was to investigate investigate all sorts of war bioweapons. Right. And then after the war, it theoretically downsized, but it downsized by doubling its footprint. It increased. Right. And then they started doing human experimentation, all sorts of stuff on these pathogens. Well, along comes Richard Nixon, and he shuts down our offensive bioweapons program. They signed the international treaty in 1970. They wrote it and started signing it in 1971. And what happened in 71? He converted Fort Detrick, and he asked the Army to move it under the NIH for use by the National Cancer Institute. Okay. So the time we shut down the bioweapons, we turned on the Cancer Institute. Now, there's a history behind that goes back to the Nazis. The big Nazi scientist that was the bioweaponeer for the Wehrmacht, his name was Kurt Blom, BLOM, and he was the big poopah of bioweapons for the Nazis for the Wehrmacht and the SS. And where was he stationed during this time that he was running the bioweapons program? He was a cancer researcher. He was in the Cancer Institute. What? Yes, they are hiding. In my opinion, they're hiding. We spend, what do we spend? Over $8 billion. Last time I looked, $8.2 billion. And that's just the upfront. Okay, upfront, we spend $8.2 billion every year on cancer. And we are not getting anything for it. The statistician of the National Cancer Institute a couple of years ago said, it's a complete fraud that because we can diagnose cancer earlier, it makes it look like people are living longer, but we are not. More people under 35 are dying of cancer than ever before. This was John something, I can't remember his last name, but he was the statistician for the National Cancer Institute said that. So what's it all about? Well, again, I don't think it's coincident that we declared war on cancer when we downphased the bioweapons lab. But the second part of this is that the Army in 2022, so this is fairly recent, the Army in 2022, now it has declared war on cancer. Personally, I thought the Army was about, troops and, weapons and actually defending the nation. But they've decided that they're going to cure cancer in our lifetime. That's the thing.
Mhm.
And so they set up this big program, lots of money. But why would you, if you were going to do bioweapons, or why would it benefit to do cancer research in the Army? Well, one is because they have the National Secrets Act, and you don't know where that money's going, right? I mean, that's my first thought. But the second aspect here is that this is the tip. What did they call the program? They called it Applied Proteogenomics, Organizational Learning and Outcomes. And I thought, what the heck is that name? I mean, it sounds kind of like, one of these crazy made up, pseudo educational, how you learn things name. No, look at the acronym. What's the acronym of that? It's Apollo.
Oh my.
I'm not making this up. So, yeah.
Wow.
I think everywhere you turn, I'm telling you, everywhere you turn. Well, and here's another one. I think maybe it was Kurt Blaum. Yeah, it was Kurt Blaum. After the war, he was tried at Nuremberg. But then what happened is he was the cancer guy, or he was in the Cancer Institute, but he was a bioweapons agent in Germany, right? Okay. So after the war, our guys from Fort Detrick go over, and they grab Kurt Blaum because out of the Nuremberg trials, and they waltz him out of the zone of into the zone of Western occupation, and they set him up in business in a cancer institute for us now. So I think, to me, this is what's going on, because if you know it's parasites, and why does every drug that works for parasites happen to work for cancer? And then they give you all these cockamamie ideas about why it works.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, yeah, it's no.
You're right.
And I've got 20 papers. A Nobel Prize was given for this in 1927. A guy in Copenhagen, Fibiger, he was given the Nobel Prize because he showed that cancer could be produced in rats if you gave them a particular parasite. The Japanese also showed that in rabbits. Okay, you give them a parasite, but in a normal animal, neither the rabbits nor the rats got cancer, right? But then they found out that in the rabbits, they gave them the parasite, nothing happened. But then if they gave them the parasite and then gave them a vaccine, the cancer blew up in the stomach and killed the rabbit. Now, in the Fibiger's case, you didn't have a veterinary organization to give you specimens, so you had to hire rat catchers, which is kind of a funny story, But they would get these rat catchers to bring in these groups of rats, and he would dose them with the parasite. Some of these groups, they'd all get cancer, and none of them would get cancer. He couldn't figure it out. They all looked the same. What's going on? So he calls in the rat catchers, and he say, "What's going on here? What's different between these rats? There's got to be something." Yeah. And the rat catcher says, "Oh, doc, those rats that got cancer, they were caught in a sugar factory." So just think about this is all before 1930. What did we know before 1930? We knew that cancer had an environmental component. We knew that cancer would not be produced in animals unless you did one of two things: fed them a high carb diet or vaccinated them.
Right.
What are we doing in this country?
Yeah. Yeah. It's awful. It's just awful. I wanted to highlight the book again. Thank you so much for joining me. This is always a treat to have you because, you're amazing. I really just really enjoy it when you're on. So I always learn something from you, always. And Escaping the Medical Matrix, Discovering the Path to Health and Freedom, Dr. Lee Merritt. And I absolutely love that you're doing this. Thank you for this. And this will be a gift for people because they'll be able to put all those pieces together that have been talked about so much. And you've come on the show numerous times, talked about all kinds of pieces. And I bet some of those pieces are in there. I would imagine. So I love that. And then tell people about the Medical Rebel. I love your website.
Oh yeah. themedicalrebel.com. Well, I got cancel cultured early on. And so I lost my orthopedic income and did something else. So I went to this, and I do a podcast every Monday night. And I also, there's lots of free information on there. I'm just trying to get the message out. I'm trying to, there's stuff on there about chlorine dioxide, how you make it, what parasites are, how you think about treating it. This is not official medical advice, but it's just for education and entertainment purposes only, as they say. But this is what I do. Okay, this is what I'm telling you what I do for me. And we talk a lot about electromagnetic stuff. So there's, I try to put the information out. There's under the red bar. It's what to do for vaccine remorse. So there's lots of stuff there.
All right. Any events coming up? Were you speaking? Anything?
Well, no, I'm just having my own event, the one in Omaha. So we still have tickets for sale.
Tell people about that.
Yeah, so it's called and you can sign up for that on the website. Front page of the website, I show you who's going to be speaking. Brian Ars is going to be there, Larry Pilevsky, Christiane Northrup. And like I said, the theme of this meeting is it's not going to help us to keep looking back. We have to look forward. How do we keep people out of the mainstream medicine and make them healthier? And so, for example, Christiane Northrup, who is a best-selling author, been on Oprah and stuff. She's great. Mm-hmm. She's OBGYN. Mm-hmm. And then Larry Pilevsky is a pediatrician, and he hasn't used vaccines, by the way, in his pediatric practice for 20 years. So he's going to talk about pediatrics in the future. But together, they're going to give a talk. So for people of childbearing age, they're going to give a talk on childbirth the way it should be.
Oh, wow.
Showing you because I'm orthopedics about as far away from OBGYN as you can get. And so I didn't really know exactly what was going on. And now I realize even what they did to my kids when they were born. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't look into this stuff. So
no wonder we have issues. No wonder what's going on. Right.
Yeah. So we can do it better.
People can get on from anywhere and view this.
Yes, they can. Now, if you can't come to the meeting, you can sign up for the live feed.
Okay, perfect. I love this. Thank you, Dr. Lee Merritt. Thanks for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
And we'd love to have you there, Kate.
I'd love it. Are you kidding? I need a getaway.
But if next year, I hope to do it again, maybe next year. So we'll maybe see you then. Come have you speak. Okay.
I'll do it. I'll talk about the media.
Oh, that'd be.
Oh my heavens.
We'll give you 3 hours on that.
I would need it at this point. No one believes me that it's just so screwed up. It's so bad. Anyway, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And
all right, thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Godspeed for sure. All right. So really appreciate Lee coming on. And of course, go get some cardiomiracle.com. It's amazing stuff. And it's that load of minerals and vitamins that are so, so important. So make sure you get those. And if you missed the first part of this broadcast, I went through the fake news of the day. It's fake news headlines with some clarifications about things that they are talking about. And then, of course, also go get the ebooks. So I did the organ donation ebook, which is not, organ donation is not what you think. Get your name off of your license. Get it off, get it off, get it off. You want the situation. Everyone's situation is going to be different in the hospital for whatever catastrophe could happen. You do not want the hospital taking control over your body and taking those things out as quickly as they want to. And brain death was a lie. So get that ebook. It's at katetalks.myshopify.com, just below me on the screen. Then also go get the one on cancer. It's helping so many people, and I'm so appreciative of that. The cancer ebook is amazing, and you're going to want this one because it's the cheat sheet. It's the cheat sheet for cancer to do it naturally and to not go the chemo route. And so I know that after 2020, after we've been through all of this, you're going to want a way to get through that without going through the medical cabal. So this is your way, and this is to know what is good, what isn't, and it's like the cheat sheet for cancer, getting through cancer for cancer treatment. So get that ebook, and then also the AI hidden bait and switch. What's actually going to happen after the job losses, because there are job losses coming. They're prepping us for that, but it's what they want to implement afterwards is the scariest part of it, not the job loss. So it's the scariest part is what people will condone in the new system they're bringing on board. And I'm not talking about digital ID. So go and get that ebook too. And I really appreciate your help with the show. I probably will not be able to do this show past September. And if September is a little iffy right now, because we're not getting the donations in for the show. And I'm just telling you that now to be prepped for that. So maybe you can tell me what guests you'd like to have on as we kind of, even do this farewell with all of this, because there's no way I can stay doing this anymore. but I've so appreciated your help in the past and appreciated your help keeping me on the air. So it's just that when you're the least favored media as far as like with censorship, and you won't go along with the cabal. And believe me, I had opportunities, but I said no. Because I have to meet God someday, and I knew the truth. I knew that they were spinning lies, and they are today to you, and they still are, and they still will. Freebie news is just easier. It's just easy to get. Free news is easy. Free talk show hosts are easy, right? And that's just how the world works now. And so anything free, public education, it's government education, but it's free. So people utilize it, and when you go to those schools, you come out, you go to school of the Romans, you come out a Roman. So I can't continue to do this without the funds to do it. And, what can I say? So if you want to help, donate. And if you want to be part of that, donate. And sponsors are even very difficult to get on board because of the nature of the things I say, the truths I tell on this show. They like to go with more mainstreamy people. So that's hard too. But, if we can find a gem, great. And if we can find some people out there who still believe in free speech and still want to support the Constitution and want to support truth and truth in media and want that to be their legacy, get a hold of them, have them donate to the show so that we can keep this going. But as of probably September, it's a no-go. And but I so appreciate you. So we'll go out with a bang, and we'll make sure that we do the very best shows we can, most informative shows we can. I'm sitting on so much research. It's just mind-boggling how many tens of thousands of hours I've spent on research. Pretty much took up my whole life for 16 years. Besides raising my kids, that was all I've ever done for 16 years. So I really appreciate the ability to do it. So humbly, but be faithful, be fearless. And of course, I will be back tomorrow. And hopefully you'll join us on the same channel, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Mountain, and of course on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you. Donate to the show, buy the ebooks, get Cardio Miracle. That all supports the show. Cardio Miracle is an amazing, amazing drink. Go get it. Thanks, you guys.